in today. Today we have got Dr. Rahima Hirji. She's the founder of Sage Naturopathic Clinic. She's the founder of Tank Nation, an acne product for teenagers. And she's also a partner at the Tummy Clinic, the virtual IBS clinic. My name is Ameya. I'm the founder of Scale of 42 and Health Buddha. Scale of 42 is a consulting firm that works with naturopathic doctors and clinics, and we have been working with more than 100 clinics now, helping them build their digital marketing and their digital presence with Health Buddha. Our ambitions are even higher. We want to go North America wide and have hundreds of thousands of practitioners sign up so that we can increase the awareness of this practice across North America. Today with Dr. Rahima, we are going to speak all about her success. She has successfully grown her business, Sage Naturopathic Clinic, over 12 years. And today we're going to have a conversation about how she did that. Hi, Rahima. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's understand your journey from when you were an early graduate, new to the industry as a practitioner, to starting your clinic.
So the first few years I actually wasn't in clinic. I was working at the college. I was a resident and then I had various roles there. And then I actually didn't start my clinical practice until about 2007. So that's when I started and I covered a mat leave in Kitchener. We had moved there. I had a new baby, and so I didn't want to go back to full-time work. So that's how it all kind of started. And then from there, it kind of grew. And to be honest, I never meant to build Sage. And I know that sounds silly, but I didn't. I wanted to work a little bit. I wanted to keep my skills up. And then when I started working, the practice just grew and grew and grew. And this was like before websites, like before everything that we know now, before social media. And it just grew from word of mouth. And I think I was in a city that was really amenable to that. I was in Kitchener. And then it came time to move back to Toronto because we had originally lived in Toronto. And I had a very thriving practice. And then I had an opportunity to open my own clinic. And not the wisest decision, to be honest, but I decided to open my own clinic. I thought if I was going to be commuting for my practice, I may as well have my own clinic. And that's how it started. And it started as, three people and a receptionist in a small, small space. And, then it grew and it grew and it grew. And I feel quite fortunate as to where we are right now. And as we're going to get into all of this, but there was a huge learning curve, and yeah, it just kind of went from there.
So let me, before we get deeper into this, you mentioned that before social media, before digital marketing and so forth, it wasn't in the way it was like it is now, right? So if you were to highlight a few things that you did in order to grow, I mean, you said word of mouth, you did say that is word of mouth, and the city was conducive to that kind of a reception. But what else? Like, I'm sure there are a lot more things that you did. Like, what kind of mindset did you have at that time when you started this journey?
So when I was building the practice, I reached out to groups. So again, to give you a bit of perspective, at that time, Facebook was just starting, right? But there was like forums where you could find, people were meeting. So I would find where these groups were meeting, right? So I remember there was a group called TOPS, and it stood for Taking Off Pounds Sensibly. And they had a bunch of different, groups, and they met in little church basements. And so I would reach out to them, and I would go and I would do lectures, and they would give me a $20 honorarium. And then, I would just kind of grow from there. My mindset was very much, I'm not going to have an event and try to get people to come to an event. It was, I'm going to go where people are already gathering, right? Because it's and to this day, I think it's very hard to hold an event and have people show up. But if you find a group that's already meeting and you can, do a lecture there or show up, then that's much easier and much better received. And so that's how it kind of started. And then I would do lectures at the library. I would talk to people, do your local Chamber of Commerce. So I did a lot of things like that to start building my practice. And then once I decided to open Sage, my mindset was very much that I wanted to advertise, but I didn't want to advertise where all the other naturopaths were advertising, right? At that time, there was Healthy Directions magazine and some other, natural based magazines. And I didn't want to advertise there because that's where everybody was advertising. And I wanted to be more mainstream. So I reached out to some contacts in Kitchener to say, how can I do this? Like, how can I be mainstream advertising? And I was, given a few opportunities. And to be honest, one of the biggest things that we did was that we sponsored the Total Women's Show in Kitchener. Everybody thought I was crazy. It was a lot of money. We hadn't even opened. We were opening in January, and I committed to sponsor this event in February. And it was the best thing I did because I did spend most of my budget for advertising on this one event, but we did it in a big way. We had huge lectures running throughout the day. We had a huge room. And then we went back to that event year after year until COVID happened and they haven't restarted the event. But that was really a big springboard and really got us the brand awareness that we now have. From there, we were able to build connections with um, corporations. So we do a lot of corporate wellness now. Yeah, so it's just kind of building on the contacts that I already had and making the most of them and doing more and more kind of outside of them.
So looking back in this journey now, I'm sure, like, I mean, it seems like, oh, this was great and this worked for you, things that work for you, right? I mean, look back, you did the show for multiple years and then things worked. And it was a really interesting strategy that you used that, okay, you're not going to go in the mainstream or the places where other naturopaths and similar practitioners would go. You picked your marketing channel in a very interesting way, like um, that was not conventional of sorts, right, for your industry. Um, Now, these are the things that worked out for you, but I'm sure that on the hindsight, yeah, I mean, things look great in 2020, everything worked out for you. But what were those times when I'm sure there must have been some difficult times when things were not really going as smoothly as they seem now? So, what can you share a bit of those challenges? Because
Oh yeah.
those are the concerns that new practitioners would see, and that they might seem like lots of obstacle, at least in our minds, when you start off new business. So what were those and how did you overcome them?
So I think I would have to answer this question two ways, one as a practitioner and one as a clinic owner.
Mhm.
As a practitioner, um, at that time, I don't know if it was a different time. I mean, it was 2008 or 2007. It did seem fairly easy to gain traction with patients. People did like talk to each other and it really did grow through word of mouth. I think it still does. I think we put a lot of emphasis on social media and Google AdWords and all of this stuff, but still to this day, most of my patients come from word of mouth. So I think I was really careful to nurture those relationships, and I would be very frank with my patients to say, "Hey, I'm growing my business. So if you know somebody who could, you know, benefit from my services, please let them know." And that's how that piece grew. That was probably the most challenging piece in the beginning. But when it came to Sage, the biggest challenge I had was finding the right people, finding the right team, whether it was admin staff or whether it was practitioners. And now we have a great team. We've got like over 20 people, and everybody's great. But it wasn't always like that. And I got one piece of advice that I probably should have taken a little bit more seriously. But somebody did tell me when I was starting to open Sage, they said, don't just rent the room, right? Don't just rent the room because you need that money to pay your rent. And so I did end up, having people as part of the team that didn't work out, and that caused a lot of stress and a lot of drama. So I would say the biggest thing that I would say is make sure you pick the people you surround yourself with very well, because they can really make or break the growth of your clinic space and your clinic's performance.
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? But, I mean, team, after all, is everything. You need to have the right type of people, right kind of people doing the right kinds of things. So many different people doing so many different things, whether it's operations, whether it's your partner or other practitioners and admin stuff, etc. So, but then it cannot be one thing I know as a business owner that you have to go through a lot of people to find those people who stick around, who you want to stick around, right? And then keep them. So how do you navigate these challenges of being with people who coming to your door who may not stick around or not someone who you want to carry that journey with?
So the biggest lesson I learned is it's not personal. And everybody talks about how it's not personal. But and I'm a very sensitive person. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn. So in the beginning, I felt that I really wanted to have control, right? I wanted like kind of strict contracts and I wanted to have, I basically wanted to micromanage everything. And as the business grew and as I learned, I would say that the way that I manage the team and the way that I interact with the team is completely different than 12 years ago, right? So now I make sure that the person that we're hiring is a good fit. I make it very clear that they don't work for me, that they work for themselves. As naturopaths, we're kind of told to make sure you've got a really good contract. I actually don't think that's very important because at the end of the day, I'm not taking anybody to court.
Mhm.
So I'm very honest with people about that. I'm like, look, this is a memo of understanding, right? Just don't be an idiot, right? I just make it very clear. I'm not going to take you to court. So let's just, go through this, make sure we agree. And if it doesn't work out, you go, no problem. Um, and so there have been times when that's happened and it's fine, wish you well, all the best. That was hard to do in the beginning. Now what I find is because it's such an easy environment to work in and because nobody's answering to me, nobody wants to answer to me, right? Because I'm not their employer. That we often have people leave and then they'll come back because they've left on good terms and they had a good experience and they've left for life situations. So that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned is how to manage the people and how to build a team that is cohesive and that respects each other.
I know we have spoken about this before, so I probably know the answer to this next question, but for our audience, what is the value of the admin staff that you have in your practice?
Oh, I cannot emphasize the value of admin staff. Back when we opened in 2012, I didn't have any money, right? I to open this clinic, but I insisted on having reception staff full time because I knew that every missed call meant past missed revenue, right? And especially if you have people like massage therapists in your team, right? If somebody needs to see a massage therapist and nobody answers the phone, they're just calling the next clinic, right? So that was very important to me that we always had admin staff. Um, Getting good admin staff is a completely different story, right? Again, we had to go through a lot of bad apples before we found the right fit. Training that admin staff and working closely with that admin staff is very, very important. Your admin staff is the people that your patients deal with the most outside of your appointment. So it has to be a good experience for them because if it's not a good experience for them, it is going to project on the rest of the clinic. So I think admin staff having, friendly admin staff, competent admin staff is very, very important.
Thank you. I wanted the audience to listen to this because one of the concerns that we come across when we do the marketing part of it, and then there are the clinics and the clients that we work with, like Sage, and we know that the efforts that we make convert handsomely for Sage versus some other clinics that we work with. And I know that a lot of credit goes to that admin staff who convert those leads that we send their way. Because at the end of the day, there's still like one final touch point that has to happen, and that is on your end before the user who comes from the website converts into a client. And that I feel, even when it comes to our work, a lot of that credit goes to the admin staff, right? A lot of work that we do can bring good results, but it can fall short if there is no one on the other end to take those leads and run with it and convert them into a discovery call or a client. So that's something that I wanted to highlight there. It's a very important thing. Um, mindset. I want to talk a little bit about mindset because what I have when we work with naturopaths and clinic owners, there is a mindset of a practitioner, which is serving the client, serving the customer, he'll work treating them, and that practitioner mindset. And then there's a business mindset. And these are sometimes at conflict with each other. You have been able to manage that well, but keep that balance. Can you talk a little bit about that balance, that mindset balance that you need?
So I think inherent in any naturopathic clinic is a conflict of interest, right? Um, we have the ability to run tests and we have the ability to sell supplements. And in order to do all of that ethically, you have to kind of have a strong moral compass. Um, for me, it was always very clear, like I didn't want to make any recommendations to a patient that I didn't feel 100% strongly about. And I was very clear with my patients. I don't want to make a lot of money off of you, right? I want you to get better and then tell all your friends. And I want to make my money that way. And I've went so far as to say this to people, right? Because I don't want people walking out with armloads of supplements because, I need to pay my rent. Like that's not how I wanted to make my money. Um, and then that I think also served me well in terms of being a business owner, because although I know the importance of making the money and generating the revenue, you have to be very clear about how you want to generate that revenue, right? Because you have to be able to be ethical about it, and you also have to be able to make a living. And that becomes really the conflict, I think. Um, I don't know if I really answered your question.
Okay, let's talk a bit about revenue streams because sustainability of a naturopathic business depends on multiple revenue streams. There is consultation, then there is supplements. You and I have worked a lot on different kinds of revenue streams that we have for Sage. Could you briefly talk about different revenue streams that you have that allows your business to increase or build a customer for yourself that is more loyal or sticky to your business?
Yeah. Um, I mean, having the multidisciplinary aspect, I think, is really, really important, especially in a town like Kitchener. Building a team that is able to address all of the patient's needs. So we have the nurse practitioners now, which is really important in a town like Kitchener where family doctors are very hard to find. So I think that was really important. And that also helps the revenue stream because now you've got multiple practitioners working under the Sage umbrella. So that part was really important. The dispensary, I know many naturopaths are leaning away from the dispensary or are using, things like full script. We've always had a fairly large dispensary and it's always been very good for us. So I think that's something that new practitioners should consider. You can start small, but the dispensary has been a huge revenue source for us. What I found wasn't helpful, and we did dabble in doing like group programs, and I did not find those to be as effective. And maybe certain people are better at it than others, but the amount of time that it would take to advertise, to do the discovery calls, to do all of the time that was spent just trying to get these group of people together, often outweighed the revenue that you would make when you finally had them, because you had to account for all the time you were putting into advertising it. And so we've leaned away from that more so lately because we just didn't think it was a good use of our time.
So talking about advertising then, so COVID happened and I remember we started working together. I think it was very early when the COVID hit. Um, Lots of companies, not just, it doesn't have to do anything with COVID, but technology changes. 90% of the company, they say, fail in the first 5 years. You have been going strong even after 10, 12 years now. Um, you have adopted really well to different technologies and digital marketing and some of the ideas that my team presents to you as well. Tell me a little bit more about your comfort, discomfort. Where does this open-mindedness comes from? What were the fears that you might have had when it comes to changing the way how marketing is done and advertising is done?
So I think I have to give a little bit of credit here to my business partner, Deanna.
Mhm.
So Deanna Walker, she's 13 years younger than me, and she became partner in 2016. And I think I was kind of stuck in my ways at that time. Like I was still doing like paper charting. Everybody wasn't doing a EMR like they are now, but it was becoming a new thing. And Deanna quite, strongly insisted that we move over to EMR. And then when we finally did, I think that's when I realized how important it was to stay on top of new tech and new ideas and new ways of advertising, because it makes your life so much easier. It facilitates your day-to-day, tasks. And then when it came to the advertising, it was kind of a natural progression just because I was kind of used to the tech and everything being online. So then that's when eventually I reached out to you, and you were certainly not the first person I reached out to. I had some negative experiences with some other companies trying to do, good websites and good Google reviews and Google Ads, etc. So I think I've just always been open to it, but I also have to tell you that I have a background in business, in the sense that I grew up in a small business. I don't have a business course in
Mhm.
my background, but I grew up in business. So some of this stuff did kind of seem second nature to me, which I'm beginning to realize as I get older that it isn't as second nature to some of the newer grads or some of my colleagues. So yeah, I think just always looking at ways that you can advertise and being on top of the tech, right? So if everybody's looking at Google Ads to get, their revenue streams, then that's what you have to look at. You can't really hesitate.
Mhm. Okay, good. So talking about new grads then. So, well, I guess you got there's a bit of a luck there that you have grown up in a business sort of household, which it's like when we are like same here with me when I grew up in the business household, I didn't really have to think about it. It just came to me because of the surroundings that I was in. Um, what would you tell the new grad who does not have that luxury?
To find people that can help them, to find mentors. And it doesn't have to be paid mentors. The other thing that I've seen in the last, 22 years of being a naturopath is this idea that if you pay for things, pay for courses, pay for packages, that it's going to, give you the secret sauce on how to build your clinic. I don't think you have to invest thousands of dollars in learning how to start a clinic. You just have to ask good questions and find the right people. And there are a lot of practitioners like me who are happy to mentor and share, our experiences with new grads and people starting up, because we want to see the profession thrive and we want to share our knowledge and what we've learned along the way. So that's, I think, my biggest piece of advice is you don't have to make it fancy. You don't have to do some, $15,000 course on how to launch your business. You just have to talk to the right people and do a little bit of digging. Maybe look at the people who own the clinics that you admire and reach out to them. You'll be surprised at what you can learn in a one-on-one conversation.
Mhm. Well, that's great. I mean, I will put your information in there for whoever has to, who would like to reach out to you.
But in
Uh,
all seriousness, that is who helped me, right? So for instance, when I started my IV clinic, I was really nervous because I was new to it. I didn't have a big space. And I remember speaking to people like Tara Janak, right, who were really supportive and really um, encouraged me. And otherwise, I don't know if I ever would have even become IV certified. So I think it is an important piece.
okay, so final question then. Been more than 10 years. You're still going. What keeps you going now?
Oh, I don't know. I think it is um, pretty much on a weekly basis. I ask myself if I want to keep seeing patients or whether I want to move to just management. Um, but the patients do keep me going. When I hear the feedback and patients are thankful and they're so appreciative, that does really keep me going. It really fills my bucket. on the business side, it's just a challenge, right? It's a bit of a game to me. It's a challenge. I want to be good at it. I feel like I am good at it, and so I always like to push the envelope a little bit. So yeah, I think that's what keeps me going is that I enjoy it, and I think that's important, right? If you don't enjoy it, then you know you. So let me take a step back. You have to, before you start a clinic, you should really take some time to ask yourself if that's something you want to do, because it doesn't necessarily translate into more money for you, right? If you're happy being a practitioner in another clinic, there's a lot less headache, there's a lot less stress, and it's not always a lot less money, right? So you have to kind of decide what you want and where you want to spend your time. For me, I do enjoy the business part. I enjoy managing. So for me, that keeps me going.
Cool. Well, Rahima, thank you very much for joining us to this very first business webinar. We really appreciate your time. And well, I enjoy working with you, and I've always enjoyed working with you, and looking forward to working with you even more and learning from you.
Great, me too.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining. If you have not had a chance to look at some of the profiles on Health Buddha, we will provide you with the links here. You can join healthbuddha.ca. It's a free practitioner platform. You can sign up. It helps with enhancing your digital presence, and that will allow you to get more applications and leads from all the marketing efforts that we do. And if you would like to have a conversation with Rahima about how you can grow in your own profession, we'll provide the coordinates in the link in the video below today. Thank you, Rahima. I really appreciate your time.
No problem.